So Michael Fields with Colorado Rising Action is one of the many people who are signing on to fight this, and I thought we could learn a little bit from him. Welcome.
It's good to be on with you.
Well, thank you for lying as well. That's good. All right. You were not around during the CC fight because you're 12 years old. It was a big, big deal. And one of the things that really hurt, especially for Republicans, was that there were some Republicans who signed on to that, namely our governor at the time and good guys like Senator Hank Brown, who was the CU president at the time. How's it lining up now? That this is first of all, is it right to say that CC is like Referendum C on steroids? It's the Godzilla radioactive version of Ref C.
Yeah, so it is permanent, like you said, taking away our tax refunds forever. They claim that it's going to go to education and transportation. We can talk about where that Ref C money went, but there's also just no guarantee that this money will go to those things at all because it's a statute, and the legislature can go in and basically say, we're going to spend this on something else, or we changed our mind in a few years. But our free refunds are still taken away permanently. And I think the difference this time is you mentioned, last time that Republicans were split on this. We're very united on this one. And
did any Republican in the state legislature, back in 2005, several Republicans in the legislature joined every single Democrat and voted to put this thing on the ballot. So now, in 2019, what's the story on CC?
There was only one Republican who voted in favor at the legislature. So in the state House, all 24 members voted against it. In the state Senate, you had one senator that did. So you had a pretty united front against this. And even some of those people that did support Ref C just came out on this No on CC ballot issue committee, including former Governor Owens and Hank Brown, saying, you know what, this is permanent. We look at the history of what happened. Hank Brown specifically mentioned that he was told he would get money as CU president and would get a third of that money. He said it never happened. Why would we let them do this again?
Stop you there. For people who might not remember this, let me bring up the history again. That I was very involved in the anti-Ref C and D fight back in 2005. My God, how time flies. And it was an experience, and we almost won. The promise was the money was going to go to education, higher education, and health care, because we said there's no money for these things. And a reluctant Hank Brown, who was president of CU, before that president of UNC, said, look what's happening to higher ed. We need this for higher ed. And the fact that he, who was an incredible voice for Ref C, is now on the opposite side, saying, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you. What is his concern? What happened?
I think he just said, look, if you look at the history of it, you look back at the budget, they treated money like it is fungible. And they said, look, this Ref C money is going to go here, but we're going to take your existing budget and take a lot of that away and move it somewhere else. And so you saw transportation and higher ed especially take a hit and really not see the increase that they were promised. And so when that happens, I think you have a lot of people looking back at that history and saying, why would we do this again and permanently?
That's the other part. Permanently. What Hank Brown told me once, I won't use the exact words, but basically he said this. He said, when he objected and said, wait a second, you promised this money was going to go into higher education like CU and Boulder. Where is it? And the legislature said, we did. Take a look at the numbers. Mm-hmm. We did. Here's the numbers. Oh, by the way, before we put that Ref C money into higher education, we took out about the same amount of money from the budget for higher education. So altogether, you get no increase. But we did put money from Ref C in technically. As you said, it's fungible, meaning he felt lied to.
Yeah, and I think that's why you see him actively coming out. He had a great quote in the Denver Post a couple days ago now. But I think what's happening right now that might be different from back then is we have polling and we can show that the Taxpayer Bill of Rights is extremely popular. It passed back in 1992 with 53%. If they put a repeal on the ballot, it would get absolutely crushed, right? So looking at that and saying, you know what, after Ref C, they said, if you pass Ref C, that'll fix everything. Then they said, you know what, if you fix hospital provider fee and move that outside of the budget, we're going to have plenty of money to do all the things we need to do, fix roads and everything else.
I'm going to translate what you say into English. So basically, they said, give us Ref C, and it's now, last year, I think it was $1.3 billion more in tax dollars. And we won't need any more. And then they said, give us the hospital provider fee, which is a clever way of calling it a tax increase and not having to go to the people, because you call it a fee and you don't have to ask the people. So they got money there. Anyplace else?
I mean, they've gone back at the last 6 times they've gone to the state, to ask for tax increases. We've said no, but I think the fees and enterprises is where most of that money is going. So you have Ref C money that allowed more money under the cap. You had hospital provider fee, which allowed another $600 million to be spent, and then you have an enterprise sector, which are all these other fees that happen that have gone up $10 billion in the last decade. They're spending more and more money every year, and I think that's what Governor Owens and Hank Brown are saying is there is the economic times and how much money they're spending at the legislature is totally different than it was then. You can have that argument back then, and obviously they won by a couple points in that one, but this is just a totally different circumstance, and I think that they felt they needed to speak out and say, look, they keep asking for more money. They haven't prioritized higher ed in Hank Brown's case. They haven't prioritized road spending. Our roads are still terrible. Teacher, pay is still down. All these things that they've promised with the money that they've gotten, they haven't done anything with. Why would we send them more, and why would we do that permanently?
It really is amazing that you missed an amazing fight back in 2005, back when there were newspapers that could actually cover these kind of things. And there was this big fight of, do we refund all this excess money? Now that excess money is going into over $1 billion a year, and it's amazing to think they still don't have enough money. Ref C was billed as a 5-year timeout. That was a fib, by the way. It was never a 5-year timeout. It was a permanent ratcheting up of the size of our budget to whatever was the highest amount in those 5 years. They can't even say this is a 5-year timeout. This is what? A forever... How do you best put what CC is? Because there's going to be a whole bunch of advertising, a whole bunch of wonderful, sad stories about why we need this. How do you explain it in an economy of words?
Well, I think one problem that they're going to have with that is they don't have a guarantee on how much, or they have no idea how much money it might actually be, right? So you passed the oil and gas regulations that could lower revenue into the state. There might not be money there. So these promises, I think, are empty to start with. But I think their main argument is going to be that it's not raising taxes. I mean, the ballot language is their best key to trying to pass this because it says it starts out without raising taxes. That is the first sentence in it, which is a lie because if the government takes and keeps and spends more of your money, it's a tax increase. I think our side has to get things out there to say this is what's going on, this is what this really means, and that takes resources on our side. Yeah, you're right. They're gonna every one of these tax increases, every one of these battles, they have millions of dollars to put out there. I think their best argument is going to be these refunds don't amount to much to start with. Therefore, investing in roads and bridges or whatever. The problem is, again, they haven't spent the money they have on that. We have a $32.5 billion budget. Just a decade ago, it was $19 billion.
Whoa, slow down. I'm
32.
Me not so good with the numbers there, Michael. So a decade ago, 19, our budget was
$19 billion,
less than $20 billion,
yeah.
and now it is
32.5. It is outpacing
$13 billion more.
Yeah, it is outpacing inflation plus population because of all these other things that we've been talking about. And people's, our wages on average aren't going up that much. I mean, government is growing. They talk about cuts. They talk about, that they have to slash budgets for this and that. That's not happening. They're spending it in a way that, and I have looked mostly at the education budget and seeing since 1990, education spending adjusted for inflation is up 20%. Teacher pay is down 20%. So money is going up and teachers are getting paid less.
Again, because I'm slow with the numbers. We keep hearing, the mantra is teachers are underpaid. Mm-hmm. Give me that number again.
So they have gone, their salary adjusted for inflation has gone down 20% since 1990.
Wow.
The education, so they should be on average making about $70,000 if we kept pace for where we were at 1990. And even though our budget has gone up 20%, teacher salaries have gone down 20%. So they are spending on administration.
But we're spending more and more every year on the education budget line. Where's it going?
It's going to administration is the biggest part of it. We haven't fixed our pension problem. Obviously, healthcare costs are a big deal. But money in education is going everywhere but to teachers. And then they go back and say, we need a tax increase or we need this extra money in order to take care of them. If I'm a teacher, I'm saying, I don't believe you. I absolutely don't believe you. And so I think that's a message, too, that we have to talk to teachers and people in education, saying we are spending more money. It's not going where they say that it should go. Same thing with transportation. So I think this is a conversation we love having, because if you go in front of a room and you take, Casey Becker and these other supporters of this, and you give them 15 minutes and give our side 15 minutes to talk about what has happened to the budget, where that money's going, what happened after REFC, we win that argument. Therefore, the biggest thing is using the grassroots support that we have, the people out there, to share that message with people.
The dirty pool behind cash grabs like this is delightful. I put things on the ballot. I have put questions on the ballot. I have gone to put things on the ballot. And when you do that, you have to go to the title board. This is a group of 3 bureaucrats who get to decide if, one, you have a single subject. And if that's the case, then they look at your proposal and they write the ballot language. What that means is they write what we see on the ballot that we get in the fall. So I'm assuming, since this is a massive keep of our money, that they had to go through that same sort of bureaucratic thing where it says, shall taxes be raised by this amount over this many years for this, the way that the title board would have to do it.
Yeah, that's not true. There's a double standard.
I'm sorry.
They do not have to go through the title board. The legislature, there's a system for the legislature and a system for us. It's unfair. It's an unfair system that if we're going to say, we're going to give ballot access to people who go and get signatures who do this, but we have to go through the title board. The legislature can almost put whatever they want on, and there's deference to them. I mean, you would have to sue them, and for the language, we have a different process, and I think that's unfair. I think that's something that needs to change in the future, that the standard should be the same way. If we have to use certain language on the ballot and go through a title board, I think the legislature should have to too. And they had to pass 2 bills in order to do this. They had to do 1257, 1258. And when it becomes a ballot issue, they just crunched it into one thing and put it on the ballot and said, here we go.
And they can do it with the most flowery, beautiful language that it's to save children's lives and to prevent puppies from dying.
Yeah.
Shall we do this? And it's not the same language that we're used to.
They said to better fund these things. Like that, to use the word better in there even, we couldn't use that in order to do that. And there is no guarantee that that's where the money's going to go. So I think they have such leeway. It is such a biased ballot language. That's why we have to get it to the point where people understand Prop CC is this tax increase that would permanently take away our refunds, and that people know that going into it and vote no. If you just walk in blank and read that thing, I think they're going to get a lot of people and trick them into thinking that this is a good thing. They're not raising taxes. They're going to fund these things. That's where that education on our side comes into play.
It's important to get an early start on this. I understand it's just the beginning of summer. But I guarantee you, those who hate our taxpayer Bill of Rights, those who love to raise taxes without asking for permission, they want to take away your consent, and they've been working away on this for a long time. If Prop CC wins this fall, and it will be on the ballot, they'll never have to ask our consent again to have the budget grow as much as they like. They will never have to ask to keep the extra money ever again. Not in our lifetimes, not in our kids' lifetimes, not in 20 lifetimes. What is it about consent that scares them so much? I mean, if they wanted to keep the excess, Tabor says, ask us for 4 years.
I think it's just the fact that they don't like the answers they've been getting. The answers they've been getting have been no, because you're not effectively using the budget you have. So I think, legislators, they always find it as a crisis. They always think they need more money. It's our job to weigh in and tell them, no, that's not the case. We have to live within a budget, and so do you. So it's just elitism. The thing, they know how to spend that money better than we do. But yeah, you're right. There's two big parts of Tabor. One side is the voting on tax increases, tax rate increases. The other side is this limit on government, and this would totally blow through that limit. I think it's something that's dangerous, and it has a long-term impact. And so I'm hoping people really get tuned in and understand how important this one is.
And the thing is, they only have to ask once. They only have to get one yes, the way that the courts have done this. Just once. Hey, Michael Fields, if people want to get involved, where do they go real fast?
So ColoradoRisingAction.org is our website.
Colorado Rising Action. And there's also TaborYes.com, which is a coalition. Michael Fields, thank you so much. Everybody, keep it here. You're on the Dan Caplis Show. I'm John Caldera.